question that you didn't respond to, the question of the conference on reconciliation that was to take place in Mogadishu, and it has been postponed, obviously. The president says it's because of security concerns. Now, given the way things are happening in Mogadishu, it doesn't appear like things are improving. How can you guarantee that such a conference will take place in mid-May? And if it's delayed even further, what does that mean for the people of Somalia?
Actually, I cannot confirm the conference was delayed. As a diplomat, I received a cable from my government informing that kind of information. I haven't yet received. I cannot confirm it was delayed. But in case it was delayed, let's take that in a scenario that it was delayed. It was delayed for certain reasons. One, because of the resources of organizing that conference. We have submitted a very detailed plan of the composition of this conference, who is going to participate, the amount of money it needs, the time it will take. So that process has been already sent in the international community. And the international community has given a warm welcome for the National Reconciliation Congress articulated by the President of Somalia. The funding has not yet arrived. That is why the conference was delayed. It's not because of what is going on in Mogadishu or in the country, because of funding.
But
the soon the funding arrives, will continue.
This sounds like a contradiction, because the person who gave this information in Cairo, actually, during the meeting of the contact group on Somalia, the international conference group, was speaking on behalf of the government of the interim government in Mogadishu. So
I'm not disagreeing.
Clarification.
I can only confirm
yes,
that the conference was delayed when my government informs that kind of information.
Okay, let's get a call just before I come to you. Let's get a call from Mark Oma calling from Kenya. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Yes, Vincent, thank you very much. I've been listening to the thrust of your discussion.
Yes.
And first of all, I would like us to acknowledge and thank the role of Uganda and Algeria. Uganda having brought troops to help establish peace, Algeria were the funders. They're the ones who lifted it. It shows Africans taking concern about rebuilding a normal civil society. And of course, in time, we hope that there will be a viable exit strategy for the Ethiopians. But I think one area the discussion has not looked at, the focus has been security, and that's right. But how do you start bringing in normal civilian life in Somalia? People may not know this, but Mogadishu has a university and it's functional. Throughout all these years, Mogadishu has one of the best internet services on the continent. They even have Coca-Cola doing business. Why don't we now start talking about getting normal civilian life going ahead? Yes, we are parallel with the security, because even when there were security problems, as I said, these things were taking place. That way, you bring different groups to develop interests and common things that are of interest to the Somalis, regardless of their political persuasion.
Thank you very much, Mark. How would you respond to that, Bashir?
Before I respond to that, I would like to respond to the issue of the conference. It's irrelevant when it happens, because it's a sham conference with no agenda, with nothing to talk about.
Isn't it supposed to talk about reconciliation?
Clans. There are no clans that are fighting right now. What the problem is, Ethiopian occupation forces. The problem is the mismanagement that this so-called government has been putting the Somali people through for the last 2.5 years. The warlords themselves were fighting amongst themselves. The Islamic courts were not there until mid-last year. The reason why the government could not work was because of its own members. And today it's still divided and is still having problems. So the conference, Abdullah Yusuf does not want to have a real conference where people can make, concessions can be made. What he wants is to get all the elders and civil society and people together, let them have talks, let them have coffee. At the end of the day, they sing Hail to the President. And that's the end of it.
And some have actually expressed the same thought that the Islamic courts was a very it arose from a need, but actually the situation in Mogadishu had been volatile even before the government could not go in. But today it looks like the focus is the Islamic militias, and the question would be, what is the priority of the government right now? To defeat this enemy, or to reconcile the different forces and have a peaceful Somalia where anybody, irrespective of their position, in spite of how opposed they are to the current government, would have a say in this government for the sake of the future of the country?
I was with the President of Somalia on January at the AAU summit when he launched Somali National Reconciliation Conference. all African head of states and AU were very delighted that finally we're having a national reconciliation conference inside Somalia. The rest of the international community made a press release, including the US government and the European Union. This conference is crucial for the peace and reconciliation in the country. It's a process we open to everybody. It's a process where the government role is very minimal. The president has appointed high proeminent personalities to convene the conference.
Some of the people included
is well known, yes. Particularly the chairman of this conference is a highly respected former president of Somalia, Ali Mahdi Mohammed. And he's the one who's going to steer this conference.
Are the people who represent Islamic courts
the participant of that conference is open for individuals, not entities. We can assure you that this conference is going to be open and transparent. The government role is only few, to provide security.
When you say they're open to individuals, how does an individual present themselves for this conference?
Individual in a sense. Yes. Individual in a sense is the highly respected traditional leaders of the Somalis. We know we will bring across the country. We are highly respected. A civil society group in the country will bring, they will participate. We will bring highly personalities in the country, academicians, scholars outside Somalia and diaspora, they will participate.
So this invitation has been taken out there?
There's highly respected Islamic scholars who did not participate. The recent fighting in Somalia will also open and participate.
Bashir, then you should be aware of this invitation to all the Somalis who have an interest in the peace of the country. This is accurate, isn't it? That everybody has been invited to this conference.
Nobody has been invited. April 16 was when it was supposed to happen. If no invitations have gone out so far, you can understand that they did not plan to invite others. What they wanted to do was just invite their supporters, claim there was a meeting, and claim success. I would like to answer the caller's question about Uganda.
Yes.
First of all, it's not Algeria that's paying for the flights. It's the U.S. government through DynCorp, and so Algeria is not the one that's airlifting the troops there. As for Uganda, the Somali people had high regard for the Ugandan people. The problem is this, that when the Ugandans came, they came to legitimize the Ethiopian occupation, the illegal Ethiopian occupation. Hence, they've been tainted by the occupation of Ethiopia. And the fighting that occurred in the last 3 weeks, the Ugandan forces are in charge of the Villa Somalia, and they're in charge of the airport, the seaport, and a major junction of Mogadishu, kilometer 4. The Ethiopian troops are firing, and Abdullah Yusuf's clan militia are firing artillery shells from the positions that the Ugandans are controlling. Hence, they've morphed into the Ethiopian occupation, and Somalis right now do not see any difference between them and the Ethiopians.
Which would be a very sad development, because they're supposed to be part of the bigger African Union peacekeeping force.
But the accurate information is, let me put the record very straight. When African Union launched deployment of AU peacekeeping force, the first country, an African, also an Arab, who came forward to finance the peacekeeping in Somalia is Algeria. The one who payrolled the deployment of the Ugandan forces is the Algerian government. So the Kenyan caller is actually giving the accurate information.